Welcome to the Biz Bash podcast, where we make biz strategy a piece of cake. I'm Elizabeth.
And I'm Cami, but you might know us better as Eliza Ann Calligraphy and Cami Monet. We want to help you, our fellow stationers, artists, and calligraphers, confidently build a profitable and personality-driven creative biz.
We're here to share our honest-to-goodness advice and actionable strategies for ambitious artists.
So put on your party hat, quit being a procrastinator gator, and let's get this party started.
Howdy doody, you guys. Yes, I just said duty on the podcast. Elizabeth is like, oh my gosh, what the heck? Start over, but I'm not going to. We're going to keep going. So today is episode 90. Oh my goodness, 10 away from 100. I can't believe it. And we're talking about our wedding invitation workflow today, you guys. So just going through every step of the process of what we do when we design wedding invitations for our clients, because it's a lot. It's a whole darn lot. And like how long it takes, the order things go, it's like the order of operations. That's what we're doing today. PIMDAS, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally in wedding invitation workflow style. So yeah, it's going to be a good one.
Yeah, remind me what the please excuse my dear Aunt Sally is. Why can't I remember what that's for?
Isn't it like parentheses, exponent, multiplication, division, addition, subtraction?
Oh, from math.
From
math.
That
is a throwback. I recognized the term when you said it, and it took me a second. I was like, why do I know this and also really not remember at all what she's talking about?
I know. Please, that is something ingrained in my brain. That's the only thing I remember from school.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yep, the order for math equations, what you have to do first, because the parentheses do always come first. So
yeah. I know. And the Pythagorean theorem. I remember that. A squared plus B squared equals C squared.
Yeah. That is a pretty straightforward one.
Yeah. I know.
It's not like I remember the equation for gravity or anything like that, because I definitely do not.
Is there an equation for gravity? I don't know.
I'm pretty sure.
See,
at least the velocity of what things fall.
Oh yeah. That's totally out the window. I mean, really the only thing you need to know, you guys, is that 1 kilogram is 2.2 pounds. Or is it 2.2 pounds? It's 1 kilogram. That's all you need to know if you're in the weight room. Okay, that's the only equation.
Okay. Yeah, you can't even remember which way is which. So
I mean, it's fine.
Therefore, the point is moot.
I can remember if I can look on the weight and tell you if it's 25 kilograms. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, this is actually this. I can. But yeah,
I want to say 25 kilograms would be 12 pounds. So I do think
that it's pounds by 2.2.
Yeah. No, I think it's 2.2 kilograms a pound.
Yeah. So there you go. Those are all the things you need to know, you guys. The end. You're welcome.
Hold on. Now I have to check, because otherwise everyone's going to be like, you guys are stupid. Oh, wait. 1 kilogram is 2.2 pounds.
Yes.
So.
Yes. Oh, no, the kitty.
Yeah, don't look. Cami can't look outside at the cat, or it's going to be wild. He's not going to stop bugging her. St. Nicholas or Nacho. He has yet to be named.
I don't think it's going to be St. Nicholas. Well, it's not going to be St. Nicholas anyway. It would just be Sir Nicholas. But oh no, he looked at me. Oh crap, Elizabeth. No, it's probably going to be maybe Newton, because then I can call him Biggie, for his nickname.
That's actually really cute.
Because everyone loved it. Well, it was Windsor and Newton.
Rewind, because now we have to explain the situation.
Okay, guys. So I'm insane, and there's always stray cats in our neighborhood. I'm always trying to feed them, and so this one, there was an orange one in our backyard. There's 2 other ones that don't have tails. That one's Shish Kebab, and what's the other one's name? Short Tail Tux. So because he's a black and white tuxedo. So Shish Kebab and Short Tail Tux. And this orange one was hanging out with him. I never named him. And he was just kind of perusing. So I put out some cat food and would try to go up to him, and he would just bolt. He was so terrified. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to keep coming out here with cat food. So he sees me putting it out here. And he was out there one day, and I was like, all right, I'm going to pet you. And I was like, I wish you could see the video, because I was creeping up on him like this. And I was like, okay. And I barely touched his forehead. And it was when I touched his forehead, it was pressing a button that was instant house cat. And I pressed the button, and he just became freaking obsessed with me, in the sweetest way, so cuddly and sweet, and literally was running away from me, and now is chasing after me and Alex in our yard, and in my lap, and just so lovable. So basically, this cat has decided he is now part of the family. So I guess we're adopting him.
Yeah, there's a good chance by the time this episode airs, the cat will be inside Cammie's house.
He will be on my lap in the house. So so he sits outside my window every day and just like waits for me to look at him so he can start meowing and get all excited. And we're trying to figure out a name for him. So I've just been like testing out different options. So I just go out there and call him a different name like every hour and see how
I'm just going to purposely call him St. Nicholas now that I messed it up.
Yeah, well, I was kind of thinking, I wanted an N name possibly because our other cat started with N. And so I was thinking Newton, like Windsor Newton.
Because the artist.
Mm-hmm. And then I was like, and then I can call him Sir Newton, like Sir Isaac Newton, and I call him Big Newton, and then call him Figgy for short, or Nudie as like a little nickname. Like there's a lot of good derivatives from that name, which I really like. And everyone on Instagram like really loved the name Newton. I was like, maybe it just fits. So
yeah, I do actually love that. So
that's a top contender right now. But I still also like Butternut because I just think that's hilarious. Well, actually, it's Butternuts because he's not fixed yet. So I mean, not allowed to say that on the podcast, but that's what I've been calling him. I mean, he's so cute, little Butternuts. But anyway,
you are so funny. You're too much. There is the cat update, everybody. Cammie and I both have 2 indoor cats and 1 outdoor cat at the moment. And we have also like rescued a cat together before when I was in Orlando.
Yeah.
I don't remember when that was, Cammie.
That was like a year ago.
Was it June of last year?
I think so. And now our neighbor adopted that kitty. So
that's right, because I got to see him in October. So cute. All right, guys, we are reeling it in because we took a real big turn there with the PEMDAS and the kilograms and the cat and all of that stuff. But we are talking about the wedding invitation workflows. And we had never done an episode for like full-blown workflows for invitations, partly because we had answered lots of Q&K questions about workflows occasionally, and we had maybe given super brief explanations. And also because I think like Cammie and I were still honing our own processes in a way, but now it's like both of us have also transitioned to slightly different focuses. So I think that kind of like opens the door to just like letting it all out there, if that makes sense. Like, I don't know, Cammie.
Yeah.
Is what I'm saying making any sense?
Yeah, totally. I think it'll just be good to like do a very like listy kind of episode where it's like, here's exactly what happens for kind of, because we've always just kind of like touched on it slightly, but never like in order, to make it like really easy for you guys to understand. So
yeah. And like we spent an entire episode alone on inquiry processes, like an entire hour on like inquiry. So it's like really, I feel like every section of like the workflows could be like divided into its own. So we'll see like how carried away we get.
That is so true. Like we could just like pull out each thing in the workflow and do like a deep dive on each one. But like this will be a good like overview, like a very straightforward kind of episode, which is always nice too, rather than getting into like the weeds of like the psychology and the why behind why we do this. So it'll just be more like, here's what happens.
Yeah, right. We can make a wedding invitation workflow course or something like that.
Yeah.
You guys could take it.
Take it way deeper.
Okay. But that being said, let's go ahead and start at the beginning. I like having 4 months to do everything. I prefer to book my clients like 6 months out from their wedding date if I'm just doing invitations. If I'm doing save the dates, it starts way earlier, but we're not incorporating save the dates in this discussion today. We're just talking about the wedding invitations and the timing of that. So I like 4 months, but I know Cammie has done it in like 2 weeks. So
yeah, I feel like my clients typically book me like a year to 10 months out. But I've also done a ton of rush jobs. And you know what's funny? I think I actually prefer doing the rush jobs because like I like doing everything in one go, like really quick, like super condensed, because then it's like over and done with and you don't have to like have something over your head for a year. So I was like thinking about it today, like how my timelines go. And I was like, all the rush jobs I've done, I've really like enjoyed it, where I'm like really focused on this project and just like knock it out.
Yes, I would agree with that. When I like think of the work and things that you have done, and the ones that have been more drawn out tend to have more drama, which also
that's true.
Isn't,
you don't have time for drama when there's just like it's just done. It's like super quick.
Yes, and you also work really well under pressure. And I think something goes to be said about it was actually my youngest brother Matthew was telling me that creative people tend to be procrastinators because we use it as a tool to fuel our creativity, which 100% makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's like in the moment you're like, well, I have to do it. Like I have to be creative. So it like forces your brain to like engage in that way.
Yeah, you have to like sit down and be like, I'm going to like go on my scuba dive, like my creative scuba. That's what it feels like to me. It's just like, okay, I'm going to go in. I'm going underwater. And then I just like get in there and I'm like, don't come back out until you're done. Do not come back up. Like, and then if you're doing, the year drawn out, you like go into the water a little bit, then you come out for like 2 months and you're like, oh crap, I got to go back in again. And so you can get like a lockdown if you just stay under there.
Yes.
Yeah.
I kind of agree with that I have realized over time that I'm like, sometimes I don't love how drawn out the process is.
Yeah, I agree. And you got to like keep the client engaged too. Like that's the thing when it's like drawn out. Well, I mean, you do need the time and like for planning and stuff, especially with like day of stuff, like you want way more time. But when you have to keep the client engaged and be like, hey, we're going to start your project in 3 months, like still stay excited. It's hard to keep that momentum going or like we still need this from you or whatever. So when you do it quickly, you can just like get all the assets you need from them right away and like make it super, super fast.
Yeah, that is not to say that people need to go out and search for rush jobs because for most people that doesn't work. I myself would not want to do it that way because it would be way too stressful.
Yeah, there's definitely the stress of like the shipping and production times. We'll talk about that because that honestly is like a huge part of the timeline that you are literally just like waiting on things to come back or things to be mailed to you. Oh my gosh. Elizabeth, remember when I did a rush job? I was moving into this house. In the middle of moving, I did a rush client and was moving offices at the same time. That was like,
that the one that had like the blue stripes with the cute little white fluffy dog and the pink flowers?
No, this one was like a blue and white like crest and like an olive branch one.
Okay.
I don't know.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, that one was, you would remember if I showed it to you because I was like, I don't know why I took on a rush job the week like we're moving, but I freaking nailed it. So, like that one, I'm like, I'm so proud of myself for that. Like that's one of the things I'm most proud about. Oh my gosh.
That is an amazing feat because I remember having like my calendar like cleared when I moved because I was like, no way am I going to be doing anything. I mean, moving into the apartment to the house wasn't bad because it was like 2020 and life was just like so much slower. But moving from my first apartment to second apartment, I definitely like took that whole week off. Wow, we are just like totally derailed this morning.
I know. I'm so sorry, everybody.
So sorry, everybody. We just have a lot to gab about, I guess. All right. So this all starts with an inquiry process. So the wedding invitation workflow for me includes like the very, very first steps of the process. And if you want to know more about inquiry processes for wedding stationers, we have the episode that we did way back when. And we also did it as like a throwback episode, I think, in December of 2020 around the holidays when life was nuts and we did not have the ability to release something else. So yeah, that would be December of 2020 if you want to go back and find the inquiry processes for wedding stationers. But I do mine a little different than Cami because I like having a phone call after having the form filled out. So that is basically like the first step for me, and that really helps me vet my people. But Cami, I think you just do like the form and kind of like go for it.
Yeah, my inquiry process is I simply have my contact form on my website and it gets me everything I need to know to get them a proposal right away, which is basically just the quantity and what they're looking for. Like anything else, I mean, this obviously, like the way I do my pricing affects the way I do my proposal. So it just makes it really easy for me to give them a price and a quote right away. And if we need to adjust anything, we kind of do it throughout the design process once they're booked. But yeah, I immediately send a proposal and contract right away. Like once they fill out the form, they get that from me. There's no phone call or back and forth at all to even talk about design things. So that's how mine works. It's a really quick inquiry process.
Yeah. And so then obviously after that, it's like you're kind of waiting to hear back from them. I listed the consultation call as a separate step under my workflow. Obviously that step doesn't exist, but I do take notes in Dubsado when I do that, create the quote and send the proposal to them. And then it's like I would say the official second step of the wedding invitation workflow is the onboarding process. And so that's after you get the proposal approved, agreement signed, and the 50% payment. And I would say that it's basically like, for me, the way I do my official onboarding is like, normally I try to send them like a little something from Greetable to be like, thank you so much for signing on with me. Nothing like crazy or insane, just something to get them excited. And then I also set a start date. So they will know when we are starting together. So that could be like in a month, it could be in 3 months, it could be in like a year, which I don't love having to like do it that way, booking that far out. But sometimes that's the reality of it.
Yeah, I think for the onboarding for me, it's the same thing. I send them a little gift from me, and then it depends on when their like wedding is, like how fast we're moving through the process. Because if we're starting really quickly, I will go ahead and send over the love story questionnaire, which is like the bread and butter of everything I do. That gets me all the information about their wedding and their personal lives, their social security number, just kidding. Like everything. But if it's a little bit further, I say like, hey, I'll follow up with you in like 1 month to send you a little homework. It's going to be really fun. So it kind of just depends. But that's like the biggest part of my onboarding thing is that love story questionnaire, and then sending the timeline as well. So my workflow kind of changes. I'm realizing like I don't really have it set in stone, but there's also the time when I send the portal that has their timeline in it, as well as a link to their guest addressing doc. So those are like 3 main things they're going to get is the questionnaire, like a mini timeline, and then the link to their guest addressing document, which is just literally a Google Doc that they can put their addresses in, because it's really nice for them to have something to work on at the time when I might not necessarily be doing something, or they're trying to gather addresses. And honestly, that part takes so long. So I like to give them like as much lead time as possible to be like, hey, this is like literally the only thing you have to do on your end. So just like keep that in mind, or start now, or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. And that's interesting to hear actually, because we'll talk about this in a bit, but I don't send them their address list until after the inspiration and sketches round.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So everyone like does it a little different, which is why it's important to hear this. But we are going to take a quick ad break, and we will be right back after this.
Hey guys, we share a ton of free, helpful info here on the podcast, but if you're looking to go deeper, you need our Business Sense for Creatives bundle. This is our foundational resource. We share it all: our pricing strategies, marketing plans, our favorite print partners, real-life examples of our invoices and workflows, and so much more. Literally, it is amazing. It really is the comprehensive guide for a money-making creative biz.
So with the bundle, you'll get access to our 3 webinar replays: Pricing with Purpose, How to Be Confident When It Comes to Charging Your Worth; People and Publicity, How to Find Clients and Deliver an Awesome Experience; and lastly, Productivity and Processes, How to Run Your Business Efficiently and Get Crap Done.
And not to mention, you'll also get our 3 bonus PDF party favors. What? We've heard from students that these are worth the price of it alone. So the party favors are pricing FAQs, the SEO cheat sheet, and a mini favorite vendors guide to get you started on where to print invitations.
So just to clarify, that is not only 3 awesome video recordings, but 3 bonus PDFs as well that support the content from the videos. So I think it's a pretty good deal.
Totally. It's the best deal out there. And you have lifetime access to it, which also adds to the whole value. So
woohoo! Don't take it from us though. Take it from the hundreds of students who have learned from the bundle and have said that these were the best, most real, and informative webinars that they've ever watched. We've seen students double their prices after watching these and totally skyrocket their businesses.
This is our roadmap of how we got to where we are today, so skip the mistakes and speed bumps, doing it the slow way, and let us put you on the fast track to running a creative biz like a boss and pricing for profit and not just pay.
And the best part, this resource is less than $100. Seriously, y'all, it's only $97, and it's so worth that price and much more. So go to bizbirthdaybash.com/bundle to purchase it today. All right, everybody, we are ready to talk about the next step of our wedding invitation workflows, which is basically the design phases. And the design phases are broken into a couple different things. So the funny thing is that like Cami was talking about things in her onboarding process that I slotted like underneath my design workflow, which I don't know why. Because like, I guess officially it would be classified more as onboarding, but I basically notated that like when the design workflow begins, the start date has been set. So I guess that is part of onboarding. The mailing date has been given, and then all other timeline details are relatively flexible, which Cami and I have talked about this many, many times, how we do our timelines like wildly different, which is so funny based off our personalities that Cami like gives them a more rigid timeline. And I'm like, yeah, we start on this date and it mails out on this date, and you don't know anything else in the middle. So yeah, I guess that's more like a little bit more like onboarding, but for some reason I had written it under like the design flow.
Yeah, mine will be like if I'm booking a client a year out, like let's say they start like, let's go January to December. Let's say their mailing date is in, I don't know, October. So I'll be like, okay, in March, we're going to like your homework is due. In April, you're going to get the first inspiration sketch from me. And then May through the middle of June, I'm going to be painting it. Your first proof is going to be June 1st. Like I'll spread it out a lot, but it might get condensed. It's like a little accordion.
Yeah.
Okay. Like it could get condensed, but I don't do hard dates unless we're doing a rush, but it's typically like month or like let's say like early May, mid-May, late May, like that kind of thing, just so they have like the gist of what's going to happen, but not like May 21st at 9:00 you're going to get this, because I like to give myself a little bit of freedom as well. But in terms of like planning out the year, it just helps me like see like, oh well, I'm doing these 5 clients or whatever during this time, so I need to make sure like that they're kind of staggered in terms of like the main painting part is different. So honestly, it's for me more than for them.
Yeah, that totally makes sense to kind of be able to look at it that way. And I know you always had like your clipboards on your wall and everything to kind of see what projects are happening at the same time.
Yeah, the timeline is actually the cover of each clipboard. It was like the timeline, so I could look at a glance and be like, oh shoot, here's what's coming up in May or whatever. So yeah, the timeline was for me. It wasn't for the client. It was for me.
Yeah, but they're at least like privy to that and might like that in a sense.
I know. Sometimes I don't even look at it. You can see on Dubsado, you can see if they've like looked. Like a lot of times they like literally never even look at it.
I'm not entirely sure that they don't even realize they can find the portal later. So I actually like don't even use the portal in my workflow, which is another difference between Cami and I.
Yeah, I love the portal. I just love it. Oh my gosh. But yeah, I just crack up when I'm like, they didn't even like, so you can just tell like the bride I have right now, one of my clients, she's like so laid back and so chill, and she like could care, like has no idea when we're supposed to, like, you know what I mean? And then some are like, no, I want structure. I need to share this with the planner. You know what I mean? You kind of can tell like the type of client, whether they're going to need that or not. So that also like affects my workflow. It's like, what are the client's needs? Are they going to do they need a huge, like really robust timeline? Like is the mother of the bride like really pushing for dates and structure? Like you can just kind of meet those needs based on their vibe.
Totally. And I also do send them a preliminary questionnaire as well, and I send that like on the start date. So the start date is like not when they're getting inspiration and sketches. The start date is when I'm like, you'll hear from me on this start date with the link to your first form. Yes.
Oh, okay. So the start date is like, this is when they get their, like for me, that would be like their love story questionnaire.
Yeah, but it sounds like your love story questionnaire is almost onboarding. Like sometimes you send that before, and it sounds like your start date is when they get the first inspiration and sketches.
Yeah, I consider that onboarding. Like I don't care how long they take filling that out. Like sometimes if I send it right away and be like, this isn't due for another 3 months, so just like add in your notes as we go along. Like I can see sometimes they just go in and like brainstorm and save. I'm like, this is just like your place to brain dump basically. And as things change, we'll use this as like the main document or whatever. So yeah, it's definitely part of the onboarding. And I like giving them like feeling like they got something once they booked with me. They're like, oh, this is like getting started. And you kind of like work off that momentum. That's why I like to give it to them right away, because they're like super pumped. So they're ready to get out all their ideas, and they might come back and change it and revisit it later. But it's just like great to get that momentum flowing and capture that.
Yeah, that's
excitement.
Great, especially if it's more like love story oriented, because I don't tend to do a lot of like their love story as much. Like I'll ask them about that during the consultation call, and that's when I make notes of their love story and how they met and details that are important to them, and then I can write that down on their behalf. My like invitation initial questionnaire is basically like, your formal names, and do you want your full names on the invitation, and what is the date of the wedding, the time, where are you getting married, where's the reception. Like, it's the literal actual information I need to create it.
Oh yeah, mine has that on there too. It's like
It's
a
a
very
very
long
it sounds
form.
like yours
It's
is
got
like very, very long, and mine's a little more brief.
it's got like well, you have that phone
Yes.
call, and I typically don't. It's got basically 3 parts. It's like the nuts and bolts of like all the nitty gritty, like time and blah blah blah, and then the love story where I just find out about their like the personality part, and then the bottom part is like, well, tell me more about your invitation, like vision, like where they can be like. And like things you hate, like I hate polka dots, but I love like invitations with wax seals, or like I really want to do a crest, and here's the things I kind of would think, just where they can like tell me their stuff and like link a Pinterest board and upload their photos of like swatches or their bridesmaid dresses. So it's kind of like a 3-parter on there, but I just call it the love story question.
No, that's great because you're able to collect so much at the same time. And I actually I really like that. So now I'm like, I don't know if I don't know if I've ever seen like a version of that questionnaire before. So
oh yeah, I'll send it to you. Yeah, it's a 3-parter.
Sounds like
sure.
a doozy, but it sounds like another good way to like get more information about them, which is really special. Okay, so obviously there are like a few differences between like the order Cami and I do things in, but that's totally okay. We're just going to keep going through the process because also underneath the design umbrella is the inspiration and sketches round. So Cami basically sends this to them on their start date, right, Cami?
I don't know. Like, I don't know what the
start date is. So you don't have a start date for your clients?
No, I don't call it a start date, I guess. Like, I'm just like, here's when the date you're going to get, like, your lookbook. Like, I haven't necessarily called it a start date.
It is the equivalent of like a start date, essentially, in the way that it's like the project is formally taking off.
Yeah. Formally taking off. So yeah, I guess that would be my start date is when I send them the lookbook and invitation sketches. So that just has like all their color palette and design aesthetic and super cute in Dubsado, this little form that I've like templated out and just swap in the images and their sketch and like a rambling explanation of what the sketches mean. And on that form, I'm just like, do you have any questions? Are you ready to start? Like, check yes. If you're ready for me to start, I was about to start singing Check Yes, Juliet, but I won't. So check yes if you're ready for me to begin painting. And most of the time they check yes and we move forward to painting and it moves pretty seamlessly. Then you got those people who are crazy and not that they're crazy, just they don't understand it's a sketch. So I always try to like be like, this is just like a loose concept. Like we can still make changes with like color and things like that. This just gives you the gist, and I love doing this part too, because it is fun to like start seeing things come to life. So once that happens and I get their feedback, then we move into the design round.
I am getting an idea, Cami.
Oh yeah.
Yes, because if we made like a template pack for people of like forms for invitation workflows, that could be really cool.
Yeah. I know. I haven't like updated my forms.
No,
in, like, 3 years. Like
we could sit down and between like what we did with the contract, between the two of ours, we're like, okay, let's look at how you did it. Let's look at how I did it. Let's make like a template version. And
no, that's what I'm saying. I'm like, they're so solid. You don't even update them. They just
that's true. Once you find something that you love.
Yeah, it's just like, I know. I love it. I mean, how do we even do that? Would they have to be like,
we could talk more. Let us know if you guys are interested in that. But I was just thinking of it because I don't know. We do get questions about it for sure. Like people love seeing our forms and we share all the time in our Facebook group in the A to Z directory. We're like, here you go. So in a way, they're already getting some of that information for free anyways. Yeah. So my start date is when I send out their questionnaire. So they have like 3 business days to fill it out. So it's very different from Cami's like, yeah, here you go. Have this back to me in 3 months, like the novel version of the love story form. And mine is like, just give me your details. I already got the important stuff in the consultation call. And then I'm like, once they send that back, I'm like, okay, I'm going to take a week and I'm going to create your sketches and inspiration and I'll have that over to you. So I send that to them and I do a really similar thing where I'm basically like, just let me know if this is headed in the right direction. So like I can think of an example from one of my brides. She got married in Cabo. I wanted to do like an arched card because that's so cool. But she was like, I want this to be angled instead of arched. So that was like something I updated on the sketch, which like normally I don't ever update my sketches. But it was something I did just to make sure that we were like on the same page. But my sketches are also black and white with a bunch of different notations. I have like written notes in the Dubsado form. I also have notes that I've typed in Illustrator that they can like read. And I save those artboards as JPEGs, which get dragged into the form. So it all like looks really cohesive and nice and branded and all that fun stuff. And so that's kind of like what kicks everything off for me. And then we start producing the artwork.
I know. And what's funny too? Like, the point between getting back their questionnaire and sending over the lookbook is the longest part of the process for me. Like that period of time where I'm just like trying to come up with an idea, like I'll print off their stuff and just like look at it and circle things. Like I just let it sit with me for like 2 or 3 weeks. And then I'm like, okay, I have the idea now. But like that is honestly the longest part of my process, that like idea creation right there. Like I was just thinking about it because I'm like, once I have the idea, I'm like, we can execute and go really fast, but that part like takes so much
like
time
you wouldn't
me.
be able to be like, I'll have it back to you in a week the way I do it.
Yeah, I could, but I don't like to do it. I'd rather just like wait on it. And like typically we do have time because like I said, most of my clients are booking so far out that I have plenty of time to like sit there and think about it for weeks. But yeah, I'm like, that's honestly the longest part of my process where I like put the most time in. It's just like truly thinking about them, stalking them, reading their form over and over again.
That's so funny.
Because I'm like, I want to nail this. So I like take my sweet time on that part. So I definitely give myself like at least 2 weeks on that, typically on the timeline. And then sometimes I'm like, I need another week and I'll just like go change the date. And no big deal. But
I love that.
Yeah.
So you kind of like snoop on the form as they are filling it out.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, like that's literally the longest part of the invitation process for me. Like, I just think that's so funny. I know I'm thinking about it. I know.
Okay, so after we do our inspiration and sketches round and they send the approval to move forward with that idea and the concept that we have sent, this is when I email them the Google spreadsheet template for their addresses. So, and I'm basically like, hey, the sooner you can fill this out, the better. I don't send it to them before the start date, and I don't send it to them at the start date because at the start date, they're already trying to fill out another questionnaire. So I feel like after the inspiration and sketches, that's a time where it's like they're really excited. We have a concept we're moving forward. So I give them a little more homework. I'm like, okay, here's the next thing you really need to work on for me while I create the artwork, because the artwork creation is the longer phase for me. Like I like having like a couple weeks to try to get all of that done and put together. And it's like, yeah, technically I could do a suite in a day. Do I like really want to? Not all the time, not necessarily. And so giving myself time to paint and design and do line drawings and all the official nuances of the suite, that's the longest part for me.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that it's also a long part for me, but I still feel like the idea part is the longest. So I'm like, oh my God. Okay. Because like once I've like got what I'm painting, I'm like, all right, let's go. Let's just go. And I'm just like set aside, a couple painting days. Like, I mean, I feel like I've had to do suites in a day. Like I literally have done that, which is like bananas to me. I'm like, why? Either I procrastinated or it's one of the rush jobs. But I feel like I like that. I like getting it all done in one go. Also depends on like how artwork heavy the suite is, because there's some where they're like, I just want like really simple stuff. But some we're doing like really heavy artwork on like every single card. And it's like a lot of complicated designs or a lot of like venue things and their dog and a crest, and there's a lot of things kind of working together, like a very specific flower, and I'm like, okay, these are like a lot more PC that I got to do a lot of separate things versus like a map for me is like goes pretty quickly because I'm like, okay, this is like one thing in my head versus like the invitation we're like, okay, we're going to do the dog on the RSVP and then we're going to do a crest. We're also going to do a venue illustration on the back and also a pattern motif with these florals, and then we're going to add this, and I'm like, oh, that's a lot of pieces. So I like to like make a list and go through it. But so yeah, it can add up, but still the idea is always the longest either way. But the artwork could be quick, could be longer as well. And then of course, then they get the first design proof, which has all of the pretty much completed suite at that point. They see it all at once. And it's laid out where they see it all at once first, like in a cute little mock-up, and then each individual piece, and they can add feedback or changes. And sometimes we still need some of the text, like it's not like completely fleshed out yet, like time of, their welcome dinner or whatever. So I'll just like put in some fake text there and we just kind of flesh out those details. So a lot of times the second and third proofs are just like getting the wording correctly and fitting it in and like maybe adjusting the artwork based on like how much text there is kind of thing. So then it's all just like design rounds from there.
Yeah, I call mine just like design round 1, design round 2, design round 3. I don't use the word, I think Cami had said like design proof. I don't even use the word proof until the actual like proofing form, just so I don't like confuse my clients.
Yeah, I put design proof. I've in the past like couple of years, I put proof 1 of 3, proof 2 of 3, 3 of 3. And it's like, it's okay if we go over, but I want them to like get in the idea, like, okay, we're trying to get
That's
this under
what 3. The top of my form, like even though it's named design round 1, the top of my form, once they open it, it says like, this is design round 1 of 3. I do the exactly same thing. So it's like the first thing that they read when they open it.
Give them a little hit.
As many of those like cues that you can give them, the better, because it continues to like set expectations and make sure everyone's on the same page. So then if they do come back later, which like really has never happened, I could be like, yeah, as you remember, that was like the first out of the 3 proofs that we have, and we've just did the third out of the third one, or we just did the third one out of the 3, and going from there. There have been like tiny little changes and like nuances of things where it'll like go over, and I call that my informal proof. And that is like basically like this built-in like buffer proof, which is funny because it's like I didn't even think about it until now that we're talking about this. But sometimes there can be just like one little tiny thing that needs to change, and I'm like, there's no freaking way I'm like re-uploading this into a Dubsado form and sending a whole thing and having them fill it out. Like, I'm not doing that. I'm just like, okay, I'm just gonna make a quick update and shoot it over to you via email. I just like attach the JPEGs. I'm like, does this look good? And then that's like what I put into their proof form.
Yeah. Or you can swap it out within that same proof too and be like, oh, I just quickly updated it, like go refresh, and they can see it.
The design round. Yeah, that's true. I absolutely could. But once they fill it out and submit it, I like having those as each their own thing so I don't lose any previous communication that might have been put in that form.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and then you do like the passive aggressive, like design round 5 of 3, design round 6 of 3.
Never had that happen.
No, okay. I do that. So like, okay, here's your design round 5 of 3, and that one cost you an extra $800. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks. Okay, goodbye.
All the fun things. So I normally space all of these design rounds out about a week apart. So when they give me their feedback on the day I receive their feedback from them. So like say I send the form to them on a Monday, they don't get the form back to me until Thursday. I always try to tell them 3 business days. They're not going to get their next design round until next Thursday. So I'm basically like, you get the updated version from me like a week after you submit, because this just like helps me create mental space. Because I'm like, yeah, could I sit down and make the edits right now and have it back to them in 30 minutes? Yeah, I could. Is that good for my sanity and like my workflow and everything else I'm balancing in my life? No, because it also sets up unrealistic expectations that they're going to get something done like immediately, when that's just not how my process works. So I always tell them at the end of the form that I'm like, thank you so much for your feedback. Your next design round will be a week from when I receive the form from you. So they always kind of know that time is built in.
Yeah, I think I aim for about a week as well. Sometimes it's like 1 day, sometimes it's like 5, sometimes like 3. Who even knows? And again, it depends on like the timeline of the process or whatever, but typically aim for, I probably keep it in the same week, I would say, because I'm like ready to like wrap up the project and get it moving along, especially if they're like, everything looks good. Like if they're ready to go to like final design round, I'm like, okay, I'm sending you the print proof tomorrow. Let's wrap this up. Like, let's go. Like, I love that. But a lot of times I think sometimes they're waiting on, they're like, oh, I don't have the info from the caterer yet to give you those things. So I'll let you know that then. And so sometimes it might be like a couple weeks between the design things. I'm not going to like, add in some other info until we have the correct one. So there's like a lot of moving pieces with it. And that's when you have to be flexible with your workflow, you guys. You can't be like, no, it's always a week. You have to be able to like, each client is like totally different. Each situation is different. And that's why wedding invitations are such a pain in the booty, because it's hard to have like this very like rock solid, like never moves type of structure. Like you really have to like kind of ebb and flow with each type of client. So because there are so many moving pieces, especially with, I feel like you're working with like higher clients who are doing like 18 events within that wedding weekend, like pulling all those details together is just so chaotic, because they have, you know, like the Thursday night or Thursday golf, and then they're doing a boys thing, and then it's like the girls night, and then they're doing a rehearsal dinner and also a welcome party, and then there's like a brunch, and then there's so many events.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, oh my goodness.
Yes.
Like, so you're waiting for all that info. So you kind of are like the one who gets all of it. So you're waiting on like 10 people to kind of come together. So there's always like a little bit of an ebb and flow.
Yes. And I will say that's a great point too, Cami, because it's like you're waiting on so many pieces from different people. Regardless of who's involved in the process, I have one point of contact. So I'm like, if that's my client, it's my client. If it's their planner, it's their planner. But it's like, I'm not receiving emails from a million people telling me what's going on. Like, you will choose one point of contact, and that will be the person that like relays all necessary information to me.
Yeah, that is a good point. It's not like the caterer's emailing.
Yes. Okay. So the last part kind of underneath that kind of like, I guess that kind of like wraps up like the design workflow umbrella, because I put that the proofing form for the suite is its own spot in my workflow. So that's like its own big form with every single little thing like typed out and laid out, and they have to check off a million boxes to be like, yes, this is right. Yes, this is right. My proof form is really annoying because it's literally like they have to be like, yes, my names are spelled right. Yes, my wedding venue is right. Yes, the time of my wedding is right. Like, I make them look at every single tiny thing because there's no way we are missing anything. So that's an instance of like, if something needs to be updated, I will literally update that proof form itself. I don't ever go back and revise my design rounds, but I will update the proofing form if something needs to be tweaked and needs to be changed.
Yeah. And the proofing form, you guys, I think both of us use a subcontract. So like they literally have to sign off on it. And once it's signed off on, there's no changes you can make to that. So that's like the end all be all. I love when we send those. Like the greatest feeling when they sign off on it and you're like, yes, now we go to print. And it's just like the feeling of job well done. I love it.
All right, guys, we're going to head to another quick ad break. And then after this, we'll be back to talk about the production part of our workflow. Hey there, fellow stationers. Are you creating custom invitations and still sending a lackluster contract that's hacked together with Google searches and generic templates? We've got you.
We've created a custom stationery contract written for stationers by stationers, and it is lawyer reviewed and approved. #LegalRockstar. The custom stationery contract template covers every stationery snafu, protects you and your client's interests, and sets up an expectation of professionalism. We've combined our previous contracts as well as years of experience to bring you a contract that covers your booty and your biz. Become a put-together pro and breathe a sigh of relief knowing that you have a contract that is easy to understand and avoids confusing legal jargon.
The custom stationery contract template is only $297, which is much less than what you can expect to pay anywhere else. And it's written by two gals who have seen it all.
Spoiler alert, it's us.
It's time to do things right. Go to bizbirthdaybash.com/contract to purchase and download your copy today. And as a special treat, use code PODCAST2020 to get $20 off. And that's podcast all caps 2020 to get $20 off.
Woohoo!
Okay, let's talk about all things production. So at this point, the proofing form has been sent to the client and it has been signed off. So now what do we do?
Now, what we do is hopefully you already have all your files formatted and ready to go for print, but I double check them against the form because sometimes I've messed up and sent the wrong one, like tiny little details, like one word wrong. And I'm like, oh my goodness. Okay. So double check those. And then it's all about sending to the printer and manufacturers for every single little detail. And, sometimes this is ordering envelope color, start ordering stamps if you've done like vintage postage for them, or I mean, any stamps, you got to start ordering them. Ribbons, wax seals, all the things. And sometimes too in my workflow, like if we're moving on like a really tight timeline, I'll be like, let's go ahead and like select the stamps, even though we don't have all the wording or whatever figured out. We know like the main design. I'm going to go ahead and give you these stamp options because vintage stamps take like a while to get here. So sometimes I'll move like some of those things up, but typically, you want to like everything happens all at the same time at the end. So you're ordering all the things, all the printing, and then you just sit there and wait. And typically I would give yourself like a nice 2-week buffer for this. Like, don't try to be like, yeah, we'll have it in like 3 days. Like, just don't do that because it'll never work out right. So like a 1 to 2 week buffer, 2 weeks I would recommend is really good because if you're doing like letterpress or foil, they're ordering plates, there's shipping delays. I mean, you just want to give yourself a good amount of time for waiting for these things to
letterpress has like way more than 2 weeks built into my timeline when I do that.
Yeah.
That I'm like, we could potentially be looking at like a month of production with what somebody wants for their invitation. Yeah. So that's like another long part of the process as well. And one where everyone is kind of like sitting on their heels a little bit because you're just like waiting. So here's something really important though, is that once everything arrives into your studio, do quality checks immediately and make sure everything is correct, because I have run into a couple funny problems before where I got lazy and didn't like test things right away and realized that like our cute folded RSVP card that we had printed wouldn't freaking fit in a normal RSVP sized envelope because like the paper was like just thick enough when it was folded that it like wouldn't go in. And so then it was like super obnoxious because I had to like go back to my client and apologize and be like, I know this sounds silly, but we basically need to like send these in A2 envelopes because like cutting them down is going to
mess with the angles.
Yeah, it was going to like mess up the whole thing. And so that is something that I quite honestly wish that I had tested even in my studio before I sent it to production. But had I realized it sooner, I wouldn't have been like frantically telling her the week of assembly that I had to like order different envelopes for the RSVP card. But what Cami said is like so true, that there are printers and manufacturers galore for every invitation suite. So I normally try to like print out the client's invoice so I can literally like make notations directly on the invoice of like what day I have ordered what and from what vendor. So like for my invitation suite for Brittany and Bo, it was like the printing, the foiling and digital was done in one place. The laser cut gate that I had for them was manufactured at another place, and we had to add in like quite a bit more time to the timeline to get that done. The silk ribbon was from a different place. Obviously the stamps were from a different place. The wax seals, like all of these things add up, not only in expense, but just in like trying to keep track of everything. So have some sort of like system in place to make sure that as things are arriving, you can like put them in a bin designated for that client so it doesn't get lost among all your other things. So that way, when you get ready to go to assembly, it'll all be right there. Oh yeah, the envelopes too. Obviously, those are also from a different place.
Yeah, and you want to order your envelopes early because they run out of colors. Lots of places run out of colors that you need, and as soon as you need it, they don't have it, and it's always a mess. So if you know what color you're going to use for your envelope, like ASAP, or like, because I feel like that happens to a lot of stationers, like.
Yeah, that can be kind of like a low risk like investment sometimes. Yeah. Just ordering those early so you have them on hand.
Yeah, I've definitely done that.
I'm always terrified that my clients are going to like change their mind last minute and then I'm stuck with a bunch of envelopes I don't need. However, it's pretty easy to say like, hey, due to the fact that some envelopes run low, I actually already pre-ordered these for you, and then try to like convince them to stick with like burgundy or whatever that always seems to like run out all the time, or dusty rose, or these colors that like everybody goes for, especially in like fall.
I know.
Everyone wants the same colors.
Exactly. And then you can always, if they don't want to use those, like you change your mind or something, you can always keep those for another client. But like, I don't think I've ever had a client be like, actually, I want a different envelope after I've ordered it. Like sometimes I don't even say I'm ordering it. I just do it because I'm like, okay.
No, I never. Yeah. If I order early, I never tell them that I'm doing it. I just like preemptively do it to as basically like
It's
strategy
like
to have
peace
them
of
ready to
mind
go.
for me to be like, I don't have to worry about it running out. I got them. They're coming. It's good. Like,
Yes. Yep. That is like a really tough thing. And that is actually something that I try to prepare my client for throughout the process as well.
Mhm.
Like, even when we do like proofs and design rounds, it's basically, it's like I always kind of have in the back of my mind, like, what is our backup going to be if we can't get XYZ? And there's been quite a bit of discussion amongst vendors recently that because of this like domino effect from 2020, like things are just insane right now. Everyone is trying to order everything at the same time. There are shortages of different types of paper, shortages of envelope colors. Like, so this just requires even more planning. So maybe like you and your clients can decide an envelope color at like the beginning. And they sign off on the envelope color and then you can like order them right away. Like make little changes to your workflow if you need to adapt to the wild times.
I know. And like, I feel like I have like a handful of envelopes that I always use. So I'm like, I just keep a bunch of those. Like, and I typically will have enough. So just order them in bulk. And then, then I can always sell them on Instagram to you guys later.
You are not wrong about that.
That
was another thing I was thinking about last night when I was lying wide awake, Cami. I was like, why does everyone always want to buy my stuff when I'm like cleaning out my studio? But then like people don't like buy like products or things like that.
Yeah,
I don't know. I was laughing.
I mean, it is. I can sell envelopes so fast. I'm like, I'm about to just buy envelopes and sell them on Instagram because like, what the heck? And then you'd be like, I released this new thing, and they're like, all right, cool.
Yep, exactly.
Oh, you bought envelopes? Take my money.
Okay, so that can be a process that takes a week to a month, depending on so many different things like printing methods and whether somebody's out of something and all that kind of stuff. So the very last thing is assembly and mailing. And then I guess like offboarding is kind of sort of in this phase, depending on if you're moving on to day of items with them or not. I still try to like nicely wrap up the invitation process by sending like an email at the end, like your invites have been sent out, like yay.
Yay.
But let me back up a little bit because assembly for me can be also a varied time depending on if I'm doing calligraphy by hand.
This one will snake up on you whether you're doing calligraphy or not. If you're doing assembly for your clients, not just sending them like the things where they can put it together themselves, but if you're doing it yourself, it takes a lot of darn time. It really does.
Mm-hmm. So like I will designate like a week to a client suite where I'm like, this is the week where it's like I'm putting together so-and-so suite. And if I normally do it like that, it's like obviously I'm getting other tasks in my business done too. But it's like every day I'm like, okay, today's the day that I have to like put all the RSVPs in the envelope and set them aside with their respective invitation. And I kind of like have steps that I do since I'm a one-woman show to manage that part of the process.
Yeah, I just hate when they have ribbons. I like always discourage ribbons. I'm like, you don't want a ribbon. Nobody likes ribbons anymore because I hate doing that. And this is the part where I call my mother-in-law and I'm like, hey, she's like, I will be there. I'm dropping everything. Like she is the best. Like she loves assembly. Honestly, she assembled our invitations too, like our wedding invitations. But so she just goes to work on that. And I show like she ties bows better than I could anyway. So
yeah, I love bows. They're like my favorite part.
Yeah, so. I freaking hate bows. But I always like to do the wax seals because I enjoy that part. Like, I just love that part. So I don't let her do that. She's like, I can do that. I'm like, I know, but I like it. So I'm going to do that. It's like the last finishing thing. And then like, you know, we both print our addresses in-house too. So within this workflow, there's also like the final like, hey, I'm going to print your addresses. If you have any changes, now is the time to put them in there because otherwise I'm like literally printing it exactly. So there's also that part of the workflow that we kind of I guess glossed over in this, but once they send it, they're like, yep, it's good to go. Then I start printing their envelopes immediately, which is another good reason why you should order your envelopes early if you can, because then you can start printing the addresses on everything really quickly and have that part of the production process done while you're waiting on everything to be printed, which is always nice.
Right. Yeah, it is nice. It's nice to try to have that list finalized as early as possible. There might always be some changes, but I basically just leave the Google form in a collaborative state, like where anyone can edit it for as long as possible. And then I basically inform my client where I'm like, hey, you have 1 week left to make changes to this form, and then it's going to be like locked and finalized essentially. And when that happens, like I download all of this information and print it as is.
Yeah, I from their collaborative Google Doc, I make a copy of that, and then I can do all my weird case changes like I like to do depending on, whatever, like if I needed something to be all lowercase because I'm doing, a caps font or whatever, then I can do that all over there and add in my fake address, like 5 of theirs for like samples and stuff, like, all different kinds of, so I just add, and then they still have their info. This was a question in our A to Z directory group at some point too. And then I can they still have all their info. They can, sometimes they put notes like who sent them gifts. They start using it as like this huge document, and then I can delete those columns on my copy without like feeling like I'm like being like, no, don't add that in here. Cause I want it to be like helpful for them throughout the process. So I can just create my own little like mailing document and download from there.
Yeah, I'm pretty strict about that. I'm like, there no other details on this document besides addresses. Sorry. Like, I'm not nice about it. And I actually have never had somebody try to use it what it's not for, if that makes sense.
Well, sometimes we have like some people get an invite to this golf thing and some people don't. And so I'll be like, make a column and say yes, and I'll make sure they get this invitation or not. And so it's like, but then.
Well, yeah, that's part of it. That's fine.
Yeah. So
I just don't want like grandma gave me teacups and I need to write a thank you note.
No,
like
I have
things like that.
But just like little things like additional that I'm like, oh, I don't want to have to, because when you like download the form, I feel like I have to delete everything that's like superfluous. So so that I can do that without being like, here's all your information gone. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Okay. So then once all the mailing happens, that's when I contact them and I'm like, okay, your suite has officially been mailed out. Your guests should be receiving them in the next week or so here. And then I basically say, in 2 weeks, you'll receive the extras from me in the mail. So I have a little bit of a buffer of some time before I send them extras, because it's like, if someone does get added last minute, like, yes, I want to do them the courtesy of like sending it out on their behalf. But once that 2-week mark is up and I send them the rest of their extras, that like effectively wraps up our working relationship for the invitations.
Yeah.
I always have extras on hand in my studio that I keep just in case like something explodes along the way and there's a fire or something insane and they need extras or a keepsake for grandma or whatever it may be. The photographer throws it in the lake, who knows. So
just usual instances like that.
Just the usual. Your dog ate it. I legit had a friend, though, that sent something out for a styled shoot and the photographer's dog sat on it. And that's not a joke, because she was like photographing it on the floor of her home.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
Dog sat on it. And I was like, oh my God. Anywho. Good times. Okay, I think that kind of wraps up the wedding invitation workflows. I'm like, oh my gosh, we should like make like a PDF download or something to like go with this. I feel like we covered so much. Hopefully you guys are rapidly taking notes and refining your workflows and your processes. And I kind of realized too, like, I think the reason we waited like so long to do this episode is because we didn't want to like come out of the gate and be like, here you go, here's how to do everything. Like, it is kind of good to try to like figure it out on your own for a little first to figure out what works for you, right? Because now you can listen to this and be like, oh yeah, mine's the same as Cammie here, or the same as Elizabeth, or like mine's totally different, but I understand why I do it the way that I do it. So this is like not the end all be all for design workflows for invitations by any means, but at least it'll give you guys some insight into our processes.
Yeah, just like a bird's eye view of everything. Like, I feel like everything has like the same components. You just like swapping things around and, kind of thing. So yeah. Okay.
Yep. All right. If you loved this episode and if you're loving the podcast, please give us a 5-star rating and review on iTunes. It means the world to us. It helps other creatives find us. And also, don't forget to take a screenshot while you're listening, whether it's Spotify or iTunes, whatever platform it is. Upload it to Instagram stories and tag us at Biz Birthday Bash so we can see it, because we absolutely love knowing that you guys are listening. It's like we know because we see the numbers go up and because people say things to us, but like we also don't know that you're listening, you know?
Don't know. It's like literally having a one-sided conversation with ourselves. And we're like, did they like that? Did they like that?
Did they like this?
So let us know if you're like, that was idiotic. Don't tell us that because I would be hurt. But you can be like, that was good. Now we really want more details on the mailing part or whatever, you know? So we like feedback, you guys. It means the world to us. We like hearing from you and trying to figure out the best ways to serve you, basically. So.
Yes. And we also have a dedicated place on our website for asking questions for our Q and Cake episodes. So go to bizbirthdaybash.com. You can scroll down to the footer of the website and click Q and Cake, and that's where you can submit a question. And I also realized, Cami, of course, if you go to bizbirthdaybash.com/podcast as well, there's also a button there to submit a question for Q and Cake.
Well, goodness, we got links all over the place, and bizbirthdaybash.com/Q and Cake. So
yes, exactly. But that one's like always the longest one because it's like Q dash and cake or something. I don't know.
Oh,
or there are no dashes.
There's
Maybe
no dashes.
There's no dashes.
Okay. Yeah. So you can get there. We just gave you 3 different routes to take. Pick one, ask a question, and we will answer it in our Q and Cake episodes.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right, you guys. We will see you next time.
Bye.